Hello everybody, it's back to Air Tycoon Online 3. It's been over a week since I recorded the last episode. I've just been slowly uploading the episodes that I hadn't uploaded that were saved on my phone, and the main reason is simply because I was a little bit busy in real life, right? So, what has happened in this last week? Well, if you take a look at our yearly profit, it is doing extremely well now. 18 billion, which means we're averaging something like 1.5 billion a quarter. If we take a look at our downtakes and uptakes, our worst downtake was 1.123 million, which was really, really good. And our best uptake actually passed $2 billion in one term. Now, we also have 500,000 depreciation, which means that we're actually getting about 2.5 million cash every turn, even though our value is only increasing 2.5, what's it called? Our value is only increasing 2 billion per turn, right? So how is this like making us compare with our competitors? I believe the last time I recorded an episode, I was less than half of Air Asia, and now I'm getting very close to 2/3 of Air Asia's value. And we are now more profitable than him too. For if I check his profit right now, I don't know exactly what it is. I haven't checked for probably a few days, but it's definitely more than him, right? So he's making 1.2 billion. I'm currently making a 1. What's it called? 6 or 7 billion, was it? Yeah, $1.7 billion. So what has been the driver of this profit? Well, let's take a look at our inventory. 136 A310s. These are extremely profitable planes. They're basically 767-200s, right? Except they cost 30 million less per, which makes them extremely profitable. They have less range, but most routes can be flown with the range of an A310-300, right? So I'm really enjoying this plane. What other planes have we added? Well, we've added some 767-300s, which are significantly better planes than 767-200s, as they seat a good chunk more people for a very slight increase in cost in comparison. And these things probably average about 5 million a turn, which is better than 767-200, but they're not the best still. I prefer the A310s when possible. Right, I mean the 767s are great, but they're not the most efficient per dollar, right? A 767-300 holds 350 people, and is $200 million, right? Let's take a look at what other options we have. We have an MD-11 here, which is faster, holds 410 passengers, and only costs 15 million more. It does have some downsides as it's less fuel efficient, right? And its at least starting satisfaction was a little bit lower than the 767-300, right? But I think we will be expanding with a lot of MD-11s from now on, as they're pretty profitable planes, and they're a good mid-ground between 747 and what's it called, other planes. So what other planes have we been expanding with in the meantime? Well, I peaked at over 450 747-100s, and now, as you can see, we have 45 747, or not 45, where is it? Or is it 45? We have 59 747-300s, right? So we've replaced some of our oldest 747-100s. If we take a look at something, right, our oldest 747-100 right now has 49 turns of life left. And if you remember, we started this world in 1970, basically, 1969 point something. But that means that I've already replaced 50 years or so, or not 50 years, 50 turns, or about 5 years or so worth of 747s, right? Yeah, as these things get low satisfaction, they become extremely unprofitable. As you can see, it's an uptake, and this thing is making barely over 3K per turn, which is almost certainly net neutral or even net negative on downticks, which is definitely not what we want. Yeah, we can see the kind of steady decline of the profits, or of what's it called, of older 747s, as the satisfaction decreases and starts to drop below certain thresholds, which kind of make them lose profitability a lot. So we've been increasing our profit a lot by replacing over 100 of our oldest 747-100s with new 747s, right? Of course, some of them are new routes, like Guangzhou to Dallas. This one was a monopoly when I made it, but is already a competition route, which is a little bit unfortunate. But if we take a look at the monopoly 747-400s, we can see just how profitable they are. Yeah, what is this? 6K, 4.5K. Almost every single one is over 10K per turn, which is so much more than the old 747s, which when they were brand new, they made about 7K per turn, and as they get older, they make less than 4K per turn, which is just really, really not what you want. With that in mind, I have $8 billion right now. What am I going to spend this on? I think one of the biggest focuses is going to be upsizing some of my older routes, right? As the kind of routes I have left, let me show you guys what kind of routes I've been making. Um, Take a look at this. Madrid to Kansas City. These are the kind of routes we've been opening. While I could upgrade these to MD11s, I'm not sure if they could be full on downticks. Right? So what instead I'm going to do is I'm going to order new MD11s and use those to replace what look like good 767 200 routes and potentially better A310 routes as well, right? Instead of ordering too many new A310s, and just blanket making those, right? As we don't want to increase our plane count too much, so we do want to use bigger planes when possible. Although when I think about it, I also think that it could be really, really nice to just, open all my planes with, 767 200 size planes or A310 size planes, probably A310s, right? Because they're better. Um, and just forget about it as we can consider demand as near infinite, right? And not try to waste time replacing planes instead of just opening new routes. But I do think this will be worth my time as the MD11 is a really, really nice plane. It will also open up a few routes which we could not tap into before just because they are just too far. So we will go ahead and at least invest in some MD11s just because it's kind of cool to also just to fly a little bit of every plane, right? As every plane's a little bit different, they're a little bit good at something different. Like 767 200s were very good at ultra thin long haul. Um, MD11 is really good at just even slightly farther, slightly thicker routes, right? Tap into more of that demand without opening too many new routes, right? And the A310s are the ultimate like skinny route um, plane. Probably in the game, like 757s are great in real life, but in the game, of course, 757s cannot stop over and are also just a little bit lacking in range. So the A310 and 767 are kind of the kings in that regard. So how many MD11s do we end up with? 30. So 30 MD11s is not too many, which is good. Because, right, I probably want to add less than 50 planes per day because I don't want to end up with too much over probably 2,500 aircraft, as that's just going to get hard to replace. Um, yeah, let's take a look at like some of the Tupolevs, right? We've replaced some of them, but like when they get to 2 to 3 turns left, right, you have to replace them, and this is kind of frustrating because it takes a long time to do so, right? I've been testing between 747 300s and 400s, and 400s appear to be much better per passenger. I did order a lot of 300s, right? And I tried non-minimum seating because I want the satisfaction to stay high for longer and not have to reduce the prices to maintain 100% load factors. So, yeah, with my short haul planes, I don't put very much effort into them, so I thought that was a pretty good idea to kind of save some time. So, what are we going to do with these MD11s? Well, the first thing is just fly routes we were previously unable to. So, when we fly a route like this, I'm kind of curious to see if this is 5 schedules per week or 4. So, let's take a look. 5 schedules per week, brilliant. Yeah, that basically means we can make a very nice and little profitable route here. And my cat is sleeping next to me now, so I'm feeling slightly bad for talking so loudly. Have a good rest, buddy. Is this in range of the MD11? Oh, it is beautiful. So we have a whole new batch of routes in range of the MD11. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go make some of these routes off camera. All right, guys. After being guilt-tripped into being quiet by my cat, who is giving me a glare right now as I speak up, um, we can see the kind of MD11 routes we are starting to make. Yeah, they're just like pretty decent cities. Um, Either 800 plus business and tour to 300, or if they're any less than that, to maybe cities without 350. You kind of get the idea, that kind of stopover route. So now with that set and done, it's time to use these leftover 2737 or 767s and just use them on whatever random crap routes we can find. Um, let's actually do this on camera because why not? And basically, the idea here is with a plane this small, it is no longer worth it to think about the route pairing. Um, yeah, simply speaking, using your mental effort to decide, hey, what city am I going to fly this tiny plane, which will always be full to, is just kind of a waste of time. Now, there are a few things we do want to avoid. We want to avoid cities with less than 150 business and tour because they might legitimately be too small to not be full, or to be full, I mean. I have not experimented with that enough to be sure, like Morigashu right here, right, which is a bit too small to be full probably, but it's also Paris, which is one of the biggest cities in the world in this game. which is really nice. I have to say though, I'm just super super thankful for the fact that this World Traveler Index has done extremely well. Um, yeah, ever since the beginning, where there was that really bad economic crisis, and I was really really scared that the world would spend like the eternity or the rest of the time in kind of World Traveler Index hell, where we're just stuck in a world with so little World Traveler Index, like low 26 or like low 2000s, like, or not low 2000s but like high 2000s, like 2800 900. I've been in worlds stuck like that into the late 80s, and they become extremely miserable as more and more cities open up, right? So right now, at the beginning of a world, right, you start off with not that many cities, right? Probably a good third of the world doesn't have their major airports open yet. So it's mostly the little cities, right? But as these airports start to open and they start to grow and they start to steal World Traveler Index, like Las Vegas, for example, starts as nothing, and Miami and Orlando and all these cities start extremely small in the game, right? As they start to grow, they start to steal the World Traveler Index from the other cities, right? Because of the way it's calculated. So there can only be kind of so much to go around, and if it doesn't grow, then your big cities become smaller and smaller. So it becomes very hard to make a good profit. This world, that was not the case at all. The World Traveler Index uh, started growing, and that is a great untaken route, by the way. Um, Geez, we need to do something special about that. Let's buy a 747 for that. Luckily, we have perfectly enough money left to do so. Let's extend the premium classes a bit. This is probably a bad idea because I'll probably forget to shrink it and do a huge order. So let's go ahead and do this. And let's do a direct one just for fun, right? I don't do too many direct flights when possible, but one or two here and there, just to have some flights making a big number amount of money is always exciting compared to, always trying to maximize the amount by stopping over at this point in the game, right? When we're already this big, and like the main bottleneck here is not going to be like how much money we have, but how efficiently we want to spend our money, right? Because the new challenge is spending all of it, not what's it called, not having enough, right? So yeah, whenever you feel like the challenge of the game switches over from what's it called, uh, not having enough money, not having enough planes, and having to maximize your planes, to what's it called? How do I spend all this money? That's when you know two things: you're doing really well, and it's time to start flying probably bigger planes or doing more direct routes. Both of these will kind of half the amount of time it takes to play, right? By flying a plane that's twice as big, you need to make half as many routes, um, right? And by flying routes directly instead of stopovers, you have to click half as many buttons to do so, which I think is always very valuable. Um, yeah, at least for me personally, one of the most frustrating things about this game is just the sheer volume of button presses you need to open a route, right? Like, it's about as minimum as I can imagine it could be, right? Like I don't know what you'd cut out. I would automatically, for example, select the perfect what's it called? Um, Level for your what's it called? Your services, right? I'd select the perfect one automatically. That could save a click. I would love to have pricing by aircraft fleet, right? Because currently speaking, right, we have to set the price the same turn we open the route. Otherwise, it'll not have what's it called? 0% load factor, and it'll be very hard to differentiate between a newly created route and an old route that's doing badly. Um, so I would love to have sort by fleet type or sort by route age, or just other things to sort routes by to change the pricing of. So that means we wouldn't have to worry about kind of making sure we don't open routes on turn breakpoints, because that's another thing that can go wrong, kind of. So yeah, a lot of things to save time on, but like I think another one is just scrolling around the world takes a good amount of time, right? It takes a good amount of time to scroll back and forth, look at different cities. I don't know how you solve this. This is already one of the more efficient UIs there are to open routes with, so I don't think that is a issue. I think the real issue is that there's too much demand, and not enough competition. Right? Like each world probably needs three times as many players, or players who are three times as active, in order to start to saturate most of the demand. Um, Yeah, basically, I need to play in a Star Channel, but I don't know if Star Channels still exist or if they still open up every now and then. Yeah, after this world, I'll definitely look to play a Star Channel or probably back to offline or other slower games like Airway Sim. Um, yeah, anyhow, as you can see, like the kind of routes we were making, like I still put a little bit of thought. Mostly, the main consideration is still keeping the two halves of the stopover at the same size. I repeat this a lot, right? Because as you replace your planes, if you know both halves of the stopover are the same size, it makes it a lot easier to replace the planes, right? And the reason for this, right, is let's just say I see on my route screen it says Rome to Montevideo. I have played this game so often, I remember how big Rome and how big Montevideo is, right? So I immediately know that kind of route would be probably good for something like an MD-11 or a Boeing 777. If the World Traveler X was good, maybe even a 747, um, right? And that's great. But let's just say I opened a stopover route with the other half of that stopover being Rome to a tiny city. So now I have Montevideo. I read it as Montevideo to Rome, right? But the other half of the stopover is Rome to just nowhere. Let's pretend it's just the smallest city you can imagine. Then one half the stopover will be full, and one half the stopover will be empty. And I'll never know because I'll never check that second half of the stopover because it takes too much time. Um, in order to check, okay, where does this route go? Where does the second half of this stop go? It's much easier to, instead of doing any of that, just set it up properly in the first place. And when you go to replace your plane, you can judge the route by one half of the stopover, and the other half will kind of fall in line. That is really, really important. Um, for kind of the era of the game where you're just replacing your planes. And wow, a random city like Yongyang that has a business and tour of 300. This is really insane. Basically, this is both really nice and really annoying because I'm gonna feel the need to open up all these routes. But as the World Traveler Index continues to grow, I know for a fact it's been gonna become more and more futile and nearly impossible to keep up with opening all these routes. Um, Anyhow, I just wanted to bring you guys another episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Just remember to set your prices at the end, right? And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.